everybody. Welcome to the Straight Outta BS podcast. Thank you guys so much for your continued support. Really appreciate it. I want to do a moment of silence for specifically like people in Florida and North Carolina, specifically right now, but also for an overarching people that are struggling with intrusive thoughts or addiction or anything like that. So on the count of three, I'm going to do a moment of silence. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you for that. I also want to thank my Patreon members, anybody that's donated, anybody that's shared, liked the video, commented, any way interacting with the video. Thank you so much, because the channel is continuing to grow. We are almost at 1,000 subscribers, so I'm just really excited. I want to keep on pushing the word out there to more people, and like specifically the general public, because I know almost every survivor probably knows about my podcast by now, but then like I want the general public and people that probably think that that we're full of it when we're telling this story to actually hear this and be like, no, this happens. There's like, 500 plus people that have, talked about it, whatever, whatever the number is, and just show them that, yeah, it is happening still and stuff needs to be done about it. Something needs to be done about it. So that being said, I want to go ahead and introduce my guest for the day. Go ahead and introduce yourself and where you went and what years.
Hey, I'm Deirdre Sugiyuchi. I went to Escuela Caribe, which was an offshoot of New Horizons Youth Ministries. I'm Gen X, so I went, January 4th, 1990 until December 1991.
Okay.
And I went to 3 programs. Like it was Escuela Caribe, the Missanabiewoods in Canada, and then New Horizons.
Okay. Oh, wow. So you were actually outside of the U.S. Okay, interesting. Walk us through your childhood a little bit and like what led up to you being sent away to the first program.
I had a great family, like everybody was like super supportive, and like when I like hit adolescence, I just was obviously the problem and I got sent away. Right. Now, I grew up in Mississippi. And yeah, my father was a doctor. He became like a born again Christian, probably I think what we would now call a Christian nationalist, when I was 5, and that was about the time we moved back to Mississippi. We were in Tennessee at the time, but then he got religion. He just got more and more extreme, and then like it was just like super hardcore rules. Like like I could only wear, when I was a kid, I could only wear dresses, or I couldn't like watch most TV or listen to most music or whatever. And he was also like really violent because God told him to, apparently. Like God told him everything, apparently. My mom kind of had her own like mental health challenges, and which were definitely exacerbated with that patriarchal structure. We went, I went from like public school to like this like weirdo Christian school, like really kind of extreme Christian school. And then like Mississippi, basically back then, like they had this whole system of academies that were basically, they were like segregationist schools to keep like white kids and black kids from going to school together. So the first one was like really hardcore Christian. The second one I went to when I was around 7th grade was like less hardcore, but still, kind of messed up. And then I don't know, about the time I was an adolescent, I was just like, I'm done. Like, I'm done with, and a lot of it was just like issues around bodily autonomy. Like like, you can't hit me. Like, you can't batter me anymore. And that was rebelling. And there were other things. Just like normal teenage stuff, but what's crazy to me is like, for example, like my husband was like way more rebellious, I would say, than I was. But there was nothing like there was no extreme, like, we're sending you away to a program in the Dominican Republic that we haven't even visited, you know. There was nothing like that in his family. It was just kind of like, hey, we're going to work through this. So I don't know. Yeah. And so when I was 15, what happened? I mean, I feel like a couple of things happened. Like, I think it's like normal a lot of times with girls, like there's like some sort of like sexual assault incident and like they act out and then they get sent away. And so I got sent to a couple, that happened. So I had an assault issue. And then a close friend of mine was sent away to Provo Canyon. And that was like really traumatic for me. And I just like kind of just flipped out. Like once that happened.
Did you know that she got sent to Provo Canyon, or did you just think that she got sent? You just know that she got sent somewhere. Did they tell you she got specifically sent there?
It was a he. And yeah, I knew he got sent to Provo Canyon. And even though like that period was like pre-internet, right? I already knew what reform schools were because there was this Stephen King book called The Talisman, and they had this whole thing, like this whole subplot in The Talisman, Stephen King and Peter Straub, where like they went to a religious reform school that I think was actually more like my school than Provo, right? But yeah, and so he got sent away, and 6 weeks after he got sent away, I got put in a short-term facility. And then right after Christmas, I got sent to a long-term facility in the Dominican Republic, which I will reiterate, it was in the Dominican Republic, and my parents never once even checked it out. They were just like, okay, because Jesus, and I think they heard about it from Focus on the Family, and they were like, you're done. So, yeah. Oh, and before that, I was also misdiagnosed with bipolar disorder at Parkwood, which was it was a charter facility outside of Memphis. And yeah, so I was totally drugged when I got sent down there, like on lithium. So yeah.
Okay. And this short-term facility, first of all, number one, do you remember what the name of the short-term facility was?
It was I think it was called Parkwood Behavioral Systems or Parkwood Center. They closed down. I can't remember what year they closed down, but before they closed down, I got my records from them.
Okay. So, and this short term, was it an actual like program, or was it like a transitional place where you're here until we send you somewhere else? Is that what it was?
It's interesting. I mean, I think it was just like, it was a transitional place. And so some people would just kind of cycle in and out. It was pretty close to Memphis, which is a decent sized city, right? And so some people, like, there were definitely a lot of kids from Memphis, and some of them would just like kind of like cycle in and out. But they definitely were like farming kids to programs. Like, for example, the person that I knew that got sent to Provo, his doctor was also affiliated with that short-term facility, because I lived in a rural area, so there's not that many resources for kids, so it's like I was like in this like small farming town, and so we had to go like an hour and a half to 2 hours away to like get mental health services. But yeah. But there was I do think like it's just interesting to me that even back then, there was just definitely this system where people were getting kickbacks, for sending people to long-term facilities, right? It's like this whole money-making thing.
Yeah. Okay. When you were there, did they tell you where you were going to go after that, or did they just send you there? Like, how did that process of you getting from the short-term place to the first program, how did that happen?
Okay. What happened was, well, one, I didn't want to go back home, right? I did not want to go back home. I wanted to go to boarding school because honestly, I was there for 53 days and it was horrible because I didn't get to go outside for 53 days, which, that's like its own hell. Which, I mean, yeah, I don't know what your program, did you go outside in your program?
We could go outside, but it was like a teased outside. Like we had to walk in lines. We had to walk in sync with the person in front of us. We couldn't just like free roam around the facility, at least until there was like a version of that or a form of that when you got a high enough level. And then you had like, but you had to like be working as a roamer. They called us roamers, and we would like wear these vests, and we'd be able to like, we'd be in charge of like taking people to like appointments, like doctor's appointments, or like taking people to their phone calls and stuff like that. So we'd have like specific destinations we were allowed to go. We couldn't just free roam, but we were allowed to roam by ourselves or with like 2 or 3 people because we had earned that privilege or whatever. But we couldn't just free roam, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you were like overseers or Hitler Youth. Yeah. You know? Yeah. No, so at my short-term facility, we couldn't go outside except like, I think like we got to go out. I remember one time we got to go do something, and that was like, you know, so, but despite all that, in the short-term facility, yeah, no one had hit me, you know? I mean, we were all drugged, totally. Like 30 out of 30 kids in my ward were on medication, which is suspect, right? You know? But yeah, you know, yeah, no one hit me, no one yelled at me. And so I was just like, yeah, I don't want to go back home. This is ridiculous. And it's interesting also, I had this one psychiatrist there that was different than the doctor that referred me to the other place. He tried to warn me, like my exit interview, like he tried to warn me because he was like, there are places out there that are really bad. And I was just like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, this is, I mean, like I had my reasons for thinking, even though I escaped, like getting like, you know, like kids at that program at the short-term facility, they were getting like juiced up with drugs or like put in restraints and stuff. That didn't happen to me. But, you know, so he's telling me that like there are places out there that are really bad. And I'm just like, well, this place has got bad things too, you know? And I was just like, I just want to go to boarding school, you know? Like a fancy boarding school is really what I wanted to go to. One of my friends went to Miss Porter's, you know, and I was like, that's what I want to do. And for some reason, I thought that's what I would be doing. And my parents told me, oh, they found the school and like they totally like lied. They were like, oh, it's like this. And they're like, oh, well, you get to do like, you know, I mean, I've always been very, you know, like I care for other people, like kind of like social justice oriented. And they were like, oh, you'll get to like do like service projects and help people out. And I was like, oh, that sounds great. And, you know, but you also have to understand, like I was on lithium. So like, I wasn't processing like a normal human being, right? And so I came home for Christmas, and then like they just put me on a plane and I went. And then as soon as I got to the school, well, as soon as I got off the plane, it was weird because one, they were like, they thought I was Dominican, you know? Because like, I mean, and yeah, they thought I was Dominican. Then they finally figured out, no, that's an American. And they were like, well, we thought you ran away. And I was just like, why would I be running away from the school? And then like, so we had to like, we ended up, and the plane had come in late. And so we ended up like spending the night at like a staff house because we had to drive into the mountains from Santo Domingo. And then like on the drive up to the school, like there were 2 dudes with me, and one of the dudes was totally just like shut down, just like would not like interact with anybody. The other dude was just like totally manic and was just like, oh my God, my parents, and I was just like, what are you talking about? And then I get to the school, and all of a sudden it's just like, we get there on campus, they sit us down, and I'm just watching everybody around me, and people are like asking to step up the stairs. People are asking to step into the doors. Like I was like, oh wow, I'm in a really, really bad place. And yeah. And then, you know, of course you go through intake, and then you go through intake and they tell you about their crazy rules. And then you're like, oh, okay. Yeah, this is, you know, of course, I mean, my head was just like, oh, of course, this is exactly what, of course, this is the school my father chose for me. So, yeah.
Did they give you any sort of physical rule manual, or did they just like tell you the rules?
Oh, we had a manual. Yeah. Yeah, it was, yeah. And, you know, so we had like a level system. And so when you came in, it was like 0 level to 5th off points. And when you came in, of course, you were 0 level. And, you know, and they had all these like ridiculous requirements to move up levels and like these ridiculous rules. And I'm sure it's the same at your place, like where like you could only like at my place, like I could only look at staff members. I could only look at girls that were on 2nd level or higher. Like I couldn't, you know, I mean, did y'all have that like contact, like where you're no contact with people that were like in your house or in your facility?
The level had to equal 4. So level 2 could talk to a level 2. Level 1 could talk to a level 3 because that equals 4. Level 1 couldn't talk to a level 1 because that equals 2. Level 2 couldn't talk to a level 1 because that equals 3.
Oh, that's a nice system. That's
So,
a nice way of remembering. They didn't have any like easy mnemonic like that for us. Like, you know, it was just like you just memorize everybody's levels. So there were like 40 people in my school, and then we were in like houses of like 8 to 10, right? And there was like girls' houses and there were boys' houses, but there would literally be people like in my house that, yeah, I didn't know. I didn't, you know, I couldn't look at them, couldn't talk to them. And then like, you know, and then like people on higher levels were like, they bossed you around, you know, and they would get in trouble if they didn't boss you around, you know. And then, yeah, and then there were all these like ridiculous requirements for moving up levels, you know. So,
like you had to, did you have to have like a group's like accept, like they had to accept you that you're ready to go up in the level, or did you have to meet like?
oh yeah, oh yes, yeah, we had target goals. People, yeah, like different forms of attack therapy. Yeah, totally.
Did you guys have any seminars?
Okay, no, not like y'all. No. See, I think, yeah, so y'all have seminars. I think like with us, like the way that they mess with us was Jesus, right?
Yeah. So was it
And,
church? Was it like a
oh,
religious
tons of
church
church.
thing? Yeah.
Yeah, oh, church all the time. You know, like Bible study, church, youth group. I mean, yeah, everything was church, and then like everything was like you were sinning, you know, and God wants this to happen to you. And but we definitely, I mean, I wouldn't say we had seminars. Like I've definitely interviewed people and they've told me about like the seminar system, and it wasn't like that though. Like we definitely, like sometimes like we would have these like house meetings, like where people would be like in like, you know, I mean, like one time for example, this friend of mine, well, this new girl came in and we're friends now, right? But I remember, and we would have like house trips, right? We would go on vacations, and this friend of mine, and while we were waiting on showers one night, like we were like kind of having this conversation, and we were like kind of like whispering about music, which you weren't even supposed to talk about. But then she was brand new, and so of course she's like talking about all this stuff, and I was a huge music fan, and so I started talking to her about music, even though like we didn't really like the same type of music, but like it came across that we both like this, like, oh my God, Youth Gone Wild by Skid Row. And so then like we were like singing Youth Gone Wild by Skid Row. Somebody caught us, right? Okay. Then that night, like we have like this like house session, and like I'm like in the middle, and then everybody's telling me how I've just like destroyed house unity because I let this person recite lyrics to Skid Row, like, you know, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like we'd have like attack therapy like that, you know, like anytime you did something, they would just like make you feel like you were the worst person in the world, you know. And of course, and then also it's just like the thing of like you're like 15, 16, 17, it's like, how are you supposed to process that? Like just as a, I mean, you know, like I worked with children later, and just like the idea that you would do that with like adolescents who are like already the most like neurotic creatures on the planet, you know, like it's just insane. So yeah, so like that's the type of stuff that we would have.
Okay, that
Yeah.
seems like a form of seminar, like the attack therapy, the group attack therapy, or they call them raps in some of the places.
Yeah.
So okay, how many people were there? If you could make an estimation, like it doesn't have to be like exact at all, just like a ballpark. How many people were there when you got there, and how many people were there when you left? The first program.
Like 40 people. Yeah, because we have 4 houses, and so I mean, and it would be between like seven at the lowest to 12 at the highest, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you remember the family names?
Like yeah, like it was like the girls' houses were, I was in TKB, and then there was one named Star, and they were both like named after people that were like either associated with the school or donated money for the houses. And then the boys were Hike and Thomas. Yeah.
Okay. And was there separation between boys and girls?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, like, just like the way, I mean, pretty much like you hung out, I mean, even like between like the different girls' houses, like you pretty much just like hung out with your house like all the time. Sometimes you would do things with the girls' houses, but not so much. Generally, like when you came down to school, we had like 4 breaks, you know, and they were 10-minute breaks, and according to like whatever level you were on, you would be able to hang out with people from different houses. And then, you know, and so I, you know, but for example, like I had this like really close friendship later on. I'm like, oh, it was like my love interest, but you know, at the time I just, you know, you're just like, oh my God, that's just like my person. That's just like keeping me like from losing it. Right. You know, but like at a certain point they were like, oh, y'all are spending too much time together. And so like they did whatever they could to break that up, you know. Or if I would hang out, you know, I was constantly given like target goals, like you're spending too much time hanging out with people from other houses, you know. And I mean, so they really did try to keep you like just with your people in your house, but
Okay.
you were able to interact, you know. Or like we would have like, I think like we would have like group PE, or we would have like one day a week, I think we all did like clean, just chores around the campus to keep it together. And then like we would have like work weeks, like several times a year. Like you would be working with different houses to like build the school essentially. So yeah.
Okay.
It was a lot of forced labor at my school. That was definitely.
Okay, so let me get this right. You were on separation, like technically, but like you could like interact with males. Is that what I'm
Oh
hearing?
yeah. Oh yeah, totally. I mean, as long as
Okay.
you're on a certain level, right? You know, like
Okay.
if you were, but if you were like, so say you're on 0 level, when you come in, you can't even like look at males, right?
Okay. Okay.
Then first level, I mean, it's kind of like I could talk to a second level or a third leveler, you know? No. If I was on first level, yeah, second, as long as they were on second level or higher. But like before that, like you couldn't even like look at them. But yeah, but we did, I mean, yeah, that is really interesting. Like thinking about like other programs. Cause yeah, we did have we definitely, I mean, for a normal high school, no, but like for programs, like, yeah, you were able to have like, I definitely have people that there were dudes like I became friends with in the program that I'm still friends with, you know? Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. Yeah.
Okay. And how long were you at the first program?
18 months. Yeah. Yeah, 18 months. And like, so, and to move up the levels, like you had to like do whatever their stuff. And but for a while I just like kind of stayed on a level, right? Like on second level, because I was like, okay, well that's enough so I can talk to dudes and not get messed with that much. But I didn't want to go up higher. And then I did get up to, I did all the requirements for third, but then, you know, like people in my house, they voted me down. And then, but then after that happened, I was like, yeah, why do I want to be on third? Like, why do I don't want to have to tell people what to do, which was pretty much like, that was my whole impetus the whole time. I was like, I didn't want to be part of that system at all. But at a certain point, they made me be part of the system. And they were like, if you don't move up this level, we're going to put you on 0. So at a certain point, they made me just keep moving up the levels. And it's weird. Like when I first came in, like I just thought people on upper levels, I was just like, I will never be that person. And then people were like, the counselor was like, oh, it's actually harder for them than it is for you. And I was just like, that is such BS. But there is some truth to that, actually. Like, I mean, I really have really hard time remembering that period. Like that's my least favorite period, because like they just made me do so many things I didn't want to do, you know. But yeah, so I was there 18 months. And then I went to Canada, which was this like wilderness survival camp, but it was also a timber mill. So.
How did that happen though? Like, did you get told you were gonna go somewhere else? Like, so you graduated from the first program?
Well, okay, well, part of the reason why I got sent up there was I was going to graduate early from high school, because I figured out how to get through all my, I was always very good, like self-taught, you know, and they didn't want me to graduate early from high school because that's less money for them, right? So they sent me to Canada so that I couldn't finish my courses in time, because I was on track to graduate an entire year early. But like, do they tell you? No. Like they tell you like 2 days before you're leaving. Like, and it's just like, and they make this big public announcement. They're like, okay, we've got this group of people is going to Canada. And like, and it's so embarrassing. Like you're at church and everybody's like looking at you and you're just like totally like caught off guard. And that was just like the worst. That was the worst day. So,
Wait, so you went from the Dominican Republic to Canada.
well, I stopped in Indiana for like a hot minute and like got like supplies and stuff, because we needed different supplies for Canada.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe I got to go home and visit my family too. And then, which was so weird to like, after like having like your every move watched, to like be like, okay, go home, go visit your family. And like, no matter like how big of tyrants my father was, I was like, I mean, it was just like, wow, I have all this freedom. Then like went to Indiana, then we like took a bus up from there to like Ontario, Canada. It was like kind of like a straight shot up, and that was like a wilderness survival camp, but also a timber mill. So like we harvested timber, which they in turn sold. It's like a work camp, you know. But it was also kind of, I mean, there were fun things too. Like we learned like a lot of like wilderness survival stuff, you know. Like, I mean, I can build a shelter out of like moss, you know. Or like I mean yeah, I know, like I mean I know how, you know, like I know how to build a fire, I know how to do all this stuff. That was really cool. Like I actually had like the highest score for a shelter, but then because it was a patriarchal program, they made like a dude win, you know. But yeah, no, I really enjoyed it. It was really beautiful. And like we would have like trail, I mean, that's the thing that was like duplicitous about my program. And I was like one of the first people, I mean, there was a book that came out about my program, but even I don't know, it's kind of hard to, I feel like sometimes it's hard to explain like to millennials or Gen Z like what it was like pre-internet, you know. But like I remember like, so around the time that you're coming out, like that's like when people started like uniting online and like forums and stuff, and they would be like, people would be like, what are you talking about? They loved us, it was so good, you know. And it was, I mean, because there were like a lot of things, like we would do house trip, or we would do canoe camp, or we would do fun things. But I was also like, no, this place was really messed up. I mean, because like really messed up stuff happened too, you know? But yeah, no. And so, yeah, so we did Canada. I did Canada for 3 months. And then at the end of the summer, and the messed up thing about that Canada program, and I just want to put this out on the record, Missanabie Academy. This is like the most messed up thing ever. 6 weeks before the rest of us came up, like we all came up, and the main people came up in June, but 6 weeks before in May, around like mid-May or so, or maybe late April, they would get a crew of dudes, right, to go up and get the camp ready, you know, because like, you know, it'd been like snowing all winter or whatever, and like they had to like, you know, like it was a camp, and like we had like wooden boardwalk stuff, you know, or like we had like, you know, like we used outhouses and stuff, you know, like they had to get it ready. And there was one dude up there named Leroy, and he molested boys. Like it's like the most, I mean, for years and years. And I just want to just like put that out there, and yeah. And
Was he there from the start, or did he get hired on later on? Was he there? Do you know?
I don't know the history. I could ask a friend. I don't know the history. I will say, like, there was like a lot of hardcore molestation that happened to people at that
At the
school.
at the
At that
wilderness
school
one?
in general, at that school was founded by this guy named Reverend Gordon Blossom, who raped his own daughter, you know? So he was a minister, you know? And he was a complete perv. He came and spoke at one point. Oh my gosh. He would do this like yearly talk, this annual talk in Canada. And it was always like segregated. It was like boys and girls, right? He would do the boys talk and he'd do the girls talk. And like the girls, and he was like totally like polyester suit, slick back hair, like just like horn rimmed glasses, like total, like you're like, oh my god, you're like totally the perv preacher. And he was the perv preacher, because like he literally was like, he gave us this like speech where he was just like, we were supposed to keep ourselves pure for our marriage, but we could let guys touch us. And you know, like I mean it's like leering from like his pulpit about how we should let men touch us but not have sex with us, because that would be, I mean, it was just like the most disgusting thing ever. And I just like remember like there was like, they had like these like banners, it was just like, God is with you, and I just remember just like staring at that banner and just thinking, where is God right now, because this is crazy, you know? But definitely later on, much later, it came out there was this one dude, Leroy, that would molest guys, that he was there by himself with these kids, and he molested a lot of the boys. And I just, it makes me really sad to know that went on year after year after year. So, and that's nobody's shame but his. But I just want to like acknowledge that happened.
Yeah, sounds like he was sounds like he was purposely fucking putting pedophiles on payroll.
Oh my god. I mean, there were so many in the Dominican Republic. I mean, yes.
So that happened at both of these schools?
Huh?
That was happening at both of the schools?
Oh yeah. Oh totally. I mean, because like, who's gonna believe us? Like, we're bad kids, you know? I mean, like at one point there was like this thing like where my high ranker was literally being molested. It was so freaking obvious. I mean, to the point of we were having sleepovers without his wife in the living room. He had locked his wife in the sleeping quarters. And I mean, there was a situation where they finally fired him, but the woman that happened to, she was just like, it's only because your testimony, Deirdre. She was just like, because I mean, I just like listed, I was like, well, this is where this person slept, this is where this person slept, this is where this person slept, and I slept up there because I didn't want to be near anybody else, you know? But it was just like my details matched something else. But yeah, no, I mean, there were so many pervs on staff. I had another house father who would on the regular watch me change clothes. But I mean, at that point I was like so brainwashed, you know? I was like so brainwashed that, you know, because they would do this thing like where they were like, the house father is always right, the house father is always right. That like I couldn't be like, hey, this is messed up. Why are you doing this? You know? And thankfully, before it advanced any further, because he totally was grooming me, his wife got him moved out of the house. But all they did was move him to a boy's house. You
Which
know?
probably continued there, yeah.
Huh?
They definitely continued there for sure.
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, I mean, there were multiple people that there was somebody else that they had questions about. They kept him on, and there was a survivor that like I'm friends with now, and she came in a couple of years after me, and she described what he did in the house, and it made me so angry because it was just like they knew as far back as 1991 that I guess late 1990 that this guy was messed up, but they kept him on at least until 1994. And the only reason why he was even taken out was because at that point he was in Indiana. And so they actually had oversight in Indiana, but like in the DR, there was no oversight whatsoever. Nobody ever came to check us out. You know, I mean, that's why they moved that. That's why they have programs in overseas facilities. You know, I mean, and of course, like, you know, you were in a program in the States, like the eye only sees so much, but like overseas programs, oh my gosh, the level of abuse. I mean, I feel like I've just been glossing it over, like, but the level of abuse that we were subjected to, it was insane. Like forced exercise, lots of forced exercise, lots of hard labor. But also like lots of Jesus loves you and we're going to take you on vacation too, you know? So, I mean, I don't know. Definitely enough to like, yeah, get people to doubt their memories. So yeah, like, so that's what I was getting to earlier. It was just like, it's hard to like, I feel like sometimes it's hard to explain to people that are like Gen Z or millennial, like what it was like if you were like a Gen X or before a survivor, because yeah, we didn't have like communities until, I mean, I would say probably around 2004, I started like connecting with people online. But yeah, and so when I started connecting with people online around 2004, I remember people were like, what are you talking about? They loved us. People that are now like, oh my gosh, they're terrible. Like, I'm sorry I doubted you at the time, but you know, it's a process. It's like a process for people to like admit what happened. And it's so, and you know, and sometimes people like, you have to feel safe to be able to talk about it too, you know? Yeah.
Do you know if any from any of these programs, do you know if anybody ever went missing and wasn't found?
Okay, from my school, did anybody go missing? No, I don't know that. I mean, I don't know. I couldn't say like with mine. No, I could not say that. Kids sometimes there were definitely deaths. But I mean, but also I don't know. And I don't know like with all like I know that they did sometimes take kids that were foster kids in. Yeah, I don't know. I can't tell you definitively. Not like,
Okay.
you know, not like, you know, I have different friends that are, yeah, no.
Okay. What about the deaths? What happened?
This kid
And
died.
which school is it at?
Escuela Caribe. There was a kid that died. It was a really sad situation. A kid died the year before I got, or right before I got there. It was a flash flood up in the mountains, and they were swimming down at a waterfall, and yeah, he died. You know, he got swept away in the current, and you know, it was really traumatizing. You know, and I will say, I feel like I had his house father later. Like, I mean, he was actually like one of the good ones, you know, like somebody that I definitely feel like they made my stay better as opposed to worse, you know, like but yeah, that happened right before I got there. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay.
That I don't know about later.
Okay. And then how long were you at the second place?
The second place, I was there for 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah, so 18.3, and then the last place was like 3 to 4 months because basically at that point I had one class left to graduate, but they didn't really have anything else to do to do with me. So I also went to college part-time too. And so I was like in reform school, but at college at the same time. So like the van would come and pick me up. And so I went to this, it was just like this little evangelical college called Taylor University. And then that's where I just like ended up going to. And I had to go to that school because I found out later, like I didn't want to go there. I wanted to go to University of Georgia, where I eventually transferred to. But they didn't have accreditation. And so that was why they had kind of funneled me into that school. It was like basically like, well, you can only go to this school, or this school. And so I ended up going to Taylor and then left from there. But yeah, several of us went there, you know.
Okay. And how many people were there in the second and last program?
I mean, I feel like maybe like the summer program, the Canada program, like you would have kids that would come in just for the summer sometimes, you know. I mean, of course, they would try to get the parents to, they would try to convince the parents to like send their kid on. But mainly, yeah, so it might be 60 to 70 in the summer. And then the last program, I feel like it was probably around 40, you know, again. Yeah,
Okay.
40, maybe 50. Because maybe 50 because I feel like they had like a house like where they had like kids from the state would come in. Like there was like a special, and like those kids, like it was like they could only do certain things, but they didn't have quite the same program as the rest of us because there was actual like guidelines they had to follow. I will say the Indiana program, it was nothing like the DR was terrible. Like the DR was just the worst place ever. Canada, you know, Canada, I think probably the most traumatizing thing, honestly, was like having to sit through Pastor Blossom's sermon. I mean, seriously, it was just like group like terror, horror. And then, but yeah, I mean, the DR was the worst. Everybody knew that was the worst, you know. So.
Okay. And what was the hardest part about being in these places, and how did you deal with it?
I mean, I got sent to the DR and they like completely stripped me down and burnt me into someone else and like completely like shattered my psyche, right? And made me into someone. I mean, I was just like completely dissociated from who I was before, right? And when I got out, I had no way. Well, one, I've been told that this whole process had been like for my own good, right? And I get out and I know that there is something that is like radically wrong with me, right? But I don't know what, and I can't even voice it because I've been told it was for my own good, right?
Yeah.
And then not only that, I'm like a magnet for predators, right? Because I've had all these like pervs like in charge of me, you know? And you know, so I was stalked when I got out. I think like what I did, how did I deal with it? I just like ghosted everybody I knew before and became a completely different person. You know, which as an adult though, I will say I'm very similar to the way I was before, except that like, yeah, I've just seen everything, right? I mean, I just saw things I never should have seen. But how have I dealt with it? Man, by having like the best adulthood possible, honestly. Like, you know, I moved to like when I was 15, I was really into like the music scene in Athens, Georgia, and then I ended up moving here and I didn't intend on staying here, but I fell in love, but like, I mean, I don't know. I was able to just create a whole new life. Like, I mean, I was just like, okay, well, I'm just going to do whatever it was I wanted before. I'm going to do it now, and of course I didn't do everything. Like, I didn't become a musician, I mean, because they kind of like, definitely, I don't know, like they definitely destroyed my confidence. I mean, I feel like I've had to like, I feel like now that I'm like solidly middle-aged, like now it's like kind of like my second birth, but yeah, but I don't know. I mean, so I've become an advocate for like against these schools. I mean, and I'm like you, I'm just like, I'm going to shut these down. I'm not ever going to shut up about them, I mean, and yeah, and I'm never going to let anybody take away my voice for anything, and I'm just going to continue speaking out, whatever it is, I mean, definitely against the troubled teen industry, but also like racism or gun violence or whatever, like, I mean, I'm just, yeah, you're not going to shut me up. So I've already been through it, like if I were, I mean, I've already been through it. So yeah, and I think that's like pretty much like, I think that's the only thing. It took me I will say this, like, it took me a very long time to come to grips with what happened to me. But I think, and don't get me wrong, I still, like, I wish it had never, ever happened to me. But I've accepted it. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Okay. If you could go back in a time machine, knowing what you know now and not go through any of the programs, would you do it and why?
Oh my God, yeah. I mean, nobody should go through a program. Nobody should go through a program at all. And then, I mean, and this is the other thing about programs, and I don't think people, I mean, yeah, I mean, because it's just like a complete, like, I mean, they strip away your whole personality. They strip away everything that you love. You forget about people that you love. I mean, seriously, I don't know if that happened to you, but like for me, like, I mean, I completely forgot who I was. I forgot who I cared about. I forgot everything, right? I mean, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, and I also just like, I find it so, the other thing I find so fascinating about it, maybe I jumped your question, but yeah, just like white people doing this. Like I was looking at your YouTube. I mean, it's just like, are the majority of survivors you talk to white?
I've had a couple of people that aren't.
Yeah, but do you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, it's a really messed up thing. Like, why?
Yeah.
Why would you do this? Like, I mean, I think that it says something that is deeply wrong with like white families that you would do this to your kids,
Yeah.
And so I'm never going to shut up about that. So I don't know if I could go back. I mean, I don't know. No, I would not go through it again. But since I can't change that, I won't shut up about it either. And I won't stop calling it out either,
Okay. And what do you think would have helped you instead of being sent away?
Oh man. I mean, my grandparents wouldn't take me in. And my dad wouldn't let them, and I mean, if I had just been able to stay at my grandparents' house, that would have been great. If I'd just been able to go to boarding school, that would have been great. But like, as far as like a larger picture, I mean, we need mental health services in America for sure, and I'm not trying to get political, but facts, Republicans vote against mental health services over and over again. We need to fund mental health services in America in general. And like, we need to be able to have family counseling, for people. It would have been really, I mean, and yeah, I've called my dad out multiple times. I also feel sorry for him, I mean, because I think he did get a lot of bad advice, I mean, part of it's his messed up belief system, but part of it's just also like, just the advice that, like what's out there for parents, it's not great. However, that being said, he's a doctor. He should have done his research, So.
How's your relationship with your parents now? Have you talked to them about how this place has affected you? Probably not because your dad's abusive, but I figured I would ask.
Oh, I mean, that's I tried to share my time with them, right? You know, they didn't want to hear about it. I've written about my experience a lot. I've written an entire book that I'm in the process of like seeking representation for to get published. But I mean, I've definitely published excerpts. I've published several articles or pieces of journalism, like where I've talked to other survivors at different schools, different programs. They weren't interested. So about 10 years ago, I was just like, I don't need this energy in my life, you know? Like, I mean, I was very fortunate because like I married into a family I'm married into a great family. So I don't need, you know what I'm saying? Like if people aren't, I mean, I really tried. I didn't want to have like, nobody wants to be estranged from their family. But like for me, like, I mean, my husband told me, he was just like, you get sick every time you go to your parents' house, like physically sick. And once he told me that, I started paying attention to it. And then I started paying attention to the way they made me feel. And then at a certain point, I just made an executive decision that, okay, this is actually for my mental health and for my physical health. It's best that we just part ways. No, I mean, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, it's sad, but you can only do what you can only do. But I would say if somebody's not going to give to you what you need, like just for survivors in general, I would say if someone's not giving you what you need, just like pay attention to your body, you know? Like if it makes you sick, like it's okay to take a pause. You know, anybody that like they struggle with their family, it's okay to take a pause and just be like, hey, I mean, because I feel like we're all like raised in these systems where we're told that you have to put family first, but sometimes you just need to create your own family, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
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 And
I
is
just,
it your,
huh?
go ahead. Go ahead.
I mean, I just do want to say, like, I mean, for me, like my relationship, like I'm a very caring person, you know? And I mean, I care a lot about the family I've created. I care a lot about my community. I've done a lot of different things. You know, it doesn't mean like I'm a terrible person just because I put myself first. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's the dominant narrative a lot of times. Like people are like, oh, you can't do that to your family. But sometimes you have to take care of you, right?
Yeah. No, I totally feel that.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, is it your, knowing what you know now, is it your belief that the remaining boarding schools could or even or should or even could be fully regulated, or is it your belief that they should be all shut down?
Oh, I mean, I think they should be shut down. I mean, I really just, hey, like people, like there are like warning signs. Like there are warning signs. People, before you send your kids away to them, like you really should go look at any of these hundreds of checklists that survivors have compiled over the years, you know, or just do research. But yeah, most of them should be shut down, you know, because they're all like based on this like messed up system. Not all, I mean, I would say 95% of them are based on synanon, which is basically a system to completely reprogram you into a different value system. So yeah, they should not exist. They should not exist. But fact, a lot of times, like people, particularly people with like excess capital, they just don't want to deal with their problems, right? And that's why they exist, you know? So again, that's your problem, not your kid's problem. And I will never shut up about that, you know? Because it just makes me so, I mean, it makes me angry to know that, and that was the thing. So like, I kind of feel like I woke up in 2004 and it made, so like when I talk to someone that's, and I very, very much feel like I'm the elder statesman at this point of like the survivor movement, you know? But like, I just remember at the point, like when around 2004, whatever, when I discovered like how prolific these schools were, and I started discovering like these old like survivor sites, like secret prisons for teens, or you know, Fornits or whatever. I mean, it just made me ill. Like just, and like you, like knowing, especially at that time, knowing that like you're like that gen of survivor. I mean, it's terrible. You know, I mean, it's terrible. Like during the pandemic, for example, like I lived pretty close to North Carolina multiple times. And so a lot of times, like my husband and I to like keep it together, like keep us together. Like we would go hiking in North Carolina 3 different times. We ran into programs like while we're out hiking in the wilderness, right? And like one time there was this girl and we were like up on this like mountain and there was this girl and they were trying to make her go out on the edge. And I advocated, like, I was just like, do you need help? I mean, like, cause they were literally, I mean, she was just like all ate up and anxiety, you know, and they were trying to force her out on the edge, look over the edge, and she didn't want to. And I just stepped in. I was just like, hey, like enough to where they were just like, they backed off and like didn't make her do it just because somebody was watching. But it makes me ill to know that there are kids to this day being forced to do things that they don't want to do because they don't feel safe, you know?
Yeah. No, I
In
totally.
the name of therapy, you know?
Yeah. Or the name of Christianity or whatever fucking religion it is.
Yeah. No, I mean, it just makes me really sad. I mean, yeah, it makes me really sad. So, like, I really admire what you're doing, but it also just makes me sad to know that somebody that came out like that, I don't know. I mean, but at the same time, it's just like we've been screaming forever that these schools need to freaking stop, you know?
Yeah, definitely. No, they
And
really do.
I don't know what else to do, you know? Even if like I lit myself on fire, people would just be like, "What? Why is she burning?"
Yeah. What would you say to a parent thinking about sending their kid to a place like this? And is there anything else you want people to know about your experience?
I mean, I would say like a family system is a family system. If there is somebody acting out in a family, it's because, I mean, I was a teacher for years, you know, like I have my master's in education. Like, you need to look at yourself, first of all. Like, that's the first thing I would say to parents is like, look at yourself, figure yourself out. Y'all need to all go to therapy. And yeah, I mean, and definitely like what would I say? I mean, I would tell them no. Like I would tell them, do you want to be like my I don't talk to my parents. Like, do you want that? Because that could be an outcome. You know, especially now, if I was a survivor coming up now and my parents sent me to one of these schools with all this information on the web, like just readily available, people that send their money, I mean, they're just burning their money. It's just stupid. It's very stupid. You know, I mean, I think we need, but I also think it like we definitely need community-based systems in America, right? Like we need community-based forms of treatment. You know, we do need places like where families can de-escalate, right? You know, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I mean, it's like I do think all these schools should shut down, but then I also know things only go so far. You know, like there's only so much that can happen. And I know some, you know, but I would just say like, I mean, and I have told friends like that we're considering sending their kids away. I was just like, I just like directed them to research, you know, like I think I even have a post on my Substack about it. It's just like about like, just they're really bad and there is no magic solution, right? There's no magic solution. Like what is happening, you know, I mean, yeah. And, you know, and like kids have different disorders too, you know, and it's hard, you know? And so, I mean, I do have empathy for parents. I mean, I don't know. I get really salty and I get really defensive with my parents. And it's just mainly just because my parents have nobody in my family has ever acknowledged anything that happened to me except my grandparents who are dead, you know? But like, I mean, I do have empathy for parents that are struggling, you know, and I do realize that there is definitely a problem. But I also, I don't know, I raised a great kid myself, you know, and I know you can do it, but you have to like make sacrifices, you know? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like
Totally.
to raise a kid, to raise a healthy kid, you have to make sacrifices, and it's hard. It's hard. It's not easy, but I mean, you can do that. You know, it's just like, I mean, I don't know. People get really antagonistic with their teens, and it's just, I mean, that's what being a teen. I mean, again, it's like you look at my situation versus my husband's, and like my husband's parents were just like so understanding with him when he was rebelling, you know. Versus my parents were just like, you're Satan, we're gonna cast you out, you know.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's not a healthy option, and it will come to bite you. You get what you get. You get what you give, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I would tell people.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. And if you ever want to do a part 2, I'm more than open to it. We could like talk about like life after the program or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, just let me know if that's something you want to do and we will make it happen. And thanks for coming on the show. And if you guys have watched so far in the video, please make sure you give the video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button if you're not already, and leave a comment down below and share the video. I'd really appreciate it. And the algorithm would too. We will catch you on the next one. Bye.